that's next. Alright, so going back to what doing last time, went through the brakes. I bled all of them. I wasn't getting more air out of them. And honestly, it doesn't feel a lot better in the pedal itself, but it's going to be hard to really tell unless I get a good bleeding through the system. Or unless I get a good drive through the system and see how it feels. If it still feels like crap at that time, I'm going to go through and pull the master off and bench bleed that. There are also some old, crustier looking lines on there that they never finished. So, you know, I mean, I'm not getting any leaks out of them at that time, but if I pull that master off, they might break, and, you know, we'll just assess it then. But that'll be the next course of action at that point. And I mean, they have a dual bowl reservoir. They had the old proportioning valve. Maybe that's acting up as well. I mean, that's looking pretty crusty over there. So I mean, that very well could be the case. I mean, we'll do both of them at the same time if need be. But we're just kind of move on from there. As long as I have her up in the air. I did pick up a floor shift from BM. So right now we're running a column shift, and I mean, some people are happy with it. Me, I'm kind of meh. As we've seen in some of the other videos, the shifting, it's very hard to get it into gear, and I went through the bottom and a lot of the bushings are kind of blown out anyways, and I'd much rather shift her from right here than put it into gear here. And as you can see, this is very sloppy anyway, so I mean, definitely a contributing factor to why this isn't getting into gear properly. So we're gonna mount one right there. So the kit that I purchased is the BM Quicksilver floor shifter right there. You see a little, you know, fancy doodad. The finish is in this black chrome, which, I mean, it's better than the regular chrome in my opinion. I'm not much of a chrome guy in general, as we can tell from that front end there. And, you know, maybe we'll go ahead and finish that in a black finish afterwards, but right now I just want to get it into the car and get it moving. This is the mechanism that it came with. I'll play with that. I still kind of gotta go through all of the instructions and how to install it. Hardware kit, 2 switches for reverse lights and neutral safety, maybe. Anyways, cable. Did look through the manual real quick, and it looks like these are going to be the 2 brackets that you're going to use for a C4 transmission. So I'm assuming those are going to be garbage at that point, or just throw them to the side. Maybe someone else will need it later on. We'll figure that out and worry about it later. But that's the kit. We're going to start pulling everything off now. All the old shifting levers and bushings and mounting. It's going to be dirty getting in there. I'm going to go on the bottom. I have to tear apart the column to some extent to get all that crap off, which I'm not 100% on that, so definitely not going to be done in a day. But, you know, stick with me and we'll figure it out. So after I pulled that guy off, here, let me get a little brighter of a light there. Got this whole assembly off just so I can have clearance to work in here. Sorry, light's kind of blocking. Let me get my other light out here. Alright, so on this assembly right here, right coming off of the steering column, I'm pulling the cotter pin off of that, and I should be able to pull that shaft out. It's getting kind of hard to see down there from the top at least, but it goes down to another one, and then a actual bracket that bolts down there, I think against the frame, and I'm going to try to pull that whole thing off. And that'll lead me to the bottom where I have to pull a couple more, where it should be easier to see at that point. Alright, we're under the vehicle now. You can see the power steering right there. This is the front right still. See, try to get a good angle here. I don't know if the phone's going to focus right. If we go right behind the rack straight up, see those two nuts right there, those are going to be, see, she's losing focus here. Well, those two nuts are the bracket that are holding on the rest of that shifter assembly. So we're going to try to get those off. And that should, I want to say, pull most of that bracket down. We'll pull those off and see what it gets us. Alright, so it did seem to do the trick. That got that bracket loose. Last thing I need to do is take off, sorry, try to get a light going at the same time here. That guy, right there. Oof. This guy, that's the last part that we should have to take off down here. I don't know if we're going to have to do anything with this bracket yet. Hopefully it's not the case. But we'll see. I mean, I think some of it has to be replaced to some extent. So we're going to pull that last nut off, and that should be all we need to pull that whole assembly out of here. Alright, so here's the whole assembly here. This guy is bolted to the frame. This one kind of bolts onto that. I actually think I have that upside down right now. This guy comes around to the steering column. I actually had to break the cotter pin off of that because I could not get it through. And then this goes onto the transmission itself. As you can see there, and there was a couple more pieces on every one of these where there's supposed to be a good bushing and a nice snug fit, but they're kind of electrical taped on, so I don't know if they were trying to band-aid it or just, you know, make it to sell, but I mean, every one of these connections are blown out, so it's no wonder I couldn't get it into gear. Now we got a ton of clearance down there, so I should be able to run the new linkage through if it is even going through there. Unfortunately, when I wanted to get better access, so I pulled the spark plug wire off and pulled the boot and, you know, pulled that guy out of it. So I'll see if I can feed the wire back through, and maybe I can get a better crimp on that wire. Otherwise I'm gonna have to buy a whole new set of wires, but we'll make it work. I don't know if I can buy just one wire, but I'd rather have them all the same, so we'll try to do that. Look, you can actually see that piece still has some electrical tape on it as well. So they're trying to band-aid everything with electrical tape, which that is not a long run kind of fix, which why again it makes me think that they're just trying to kind of make it to a sellable condition. But now that that's all cleared up, I'm going to start tearing apart the column and see what I need to do to get that kind of ready for it, and then get the shifter mounted in place there. I already pulled out the rest of the carpet. You can see all the patch jobs that they did in there, and then you can see there's a number of other spots where there's a hole there, there's some small pinholes there, which I'm just going to have to do the whole floorboard, or at least some large panels coming this next winter. But let's start tearing apart this column and kind of figure out what that's about. Alright, so we're in the car, taking the steering wheel apart so I can get to this column assembly and remove the locking mechanism and I got a new steering wheel I want to put in, so might as well do that while I'm here. To take this part of the steering wheel off, if you still have them, there's 2 screws that are coming into the back. I pulled them off right over there, but those guys. Now I'm going to pull this nut assembly off if I can. It's like 1 in the morning, so I don't want to use any impact tools, a little loud. So hopefully a little bit of a breaker bar will do it, and I won't have to wake anybody up. While I'm in there, I'm going to replace the assembly for the turn signal. It is super sloppy, and I did buy a new one. Hopefully it's the right one, but we'll see when I get there. Alright, so essentially this is what I made. Just kind of like an I slot or H slot, whatever. And there's 2 holes there that are threaded to, if they weren't 5/16 at first, they are now. They were a little chewed up prior. Someone had removed it when they painted all of this, and I'm just kind of using what I got. Alright, so ironically but not surprisingly, I did not have long enough bolts, so I just kind of had to jimmy rig some bolts. I got a carriage bolt in here, this bolt that is way too long, but let's see if we can get a good angle on that. I mean, essentially you're going to have one threaded in right there, one threaded in right there. Your long bolt is going to be pressing against the shaft there, and it should back the steering wheel itself out. Let's see if it works as is intended, or we're going to strip some bolts out. Looks like a ladder. Alright. See if we can get those bolts on there a little better. Didn't get it recorded because I needed my hands for it, but she is off. Let's go ahead and back these sketchy screws here. Voila. So one of the reasons I need to remove this was so I can take the steering wheel lock off of it, and that's going to be this little guy right here. When you turn the ignition, let's see if we can show you here. You see how it goes back, and we need to remove that so it doesn't get caught in these guys as it rotates and locks into place. Additionally, steering wheel mechanism is pretty shot, and we're gonna see it because I did pick up a new one. Hopefully that's all that I need, and we can get that right again. And then as long as I have this apart, I might as well paint the thing because this red not doing it for me. I'm gonna be doing away with the steering wheel as well, but I do have to get a hub for the new one. So we'll just toss that over there for now and kind of start working on this. We'll see if I actually get it painted or not. As long as I can get that turn signal swapped out and I can get the new hub and everything in place and get the lock removed, I might just put it together now. Just every time I take something apart, it's adding to what I have to do. So let's go with that for now. Alright, we're making progress on it. I took this guy off, so I unscrewed all the little screws that are holding everything in place, pulled this little cylinder guy out here, which I'll just put that back at the end. The wiring harness right here has to actually come off and come forward enough for this guy to come out, the turn signal hazard cam. And then when I'm putting it back together, I'll put the new turn signal in. Still trying to get this whole assembly off so I can kind of remove this whole shifter cable, and I still got to be able to get that pin out, or I'm just going to cut it, you know. It doesn't really matter either way for what I'm doing. So I'm going to take this and this stud off and see if that'll get me where I need to be. Hoping for the best. We'll see. Alright, a couple more updates. I'm getting ready to actually take that snap ring off and see if I can pull the whole shaft off through there, because it's not coming off otherwise. Another thing I did is I took the shift arm off. There's a roll pin that sits on the top through there. Pop that out and the whole lever comes out itself. You can see it right there. The turn signal, it has a couple flats on it, and you can get a crescent wrench on there. Sorry, try to get it good. There you go. And crescent wrench or regular wrench, whatever size it is, on there, and spin it counterclockwise off. I did take, there was some trim piece down here, a little protective cover. It just has a couple nuts threaded into the bottom of that, and kind of hold it in place. So now, yeah, let's get the snap ring off and see if it'll come off at that point. Alright, here's where we're at. What I ended up doing is, once I got that snap ring off, I put the nut slightly back on the shaft there, gave it a little tap, and, well, kind of pulling it forward, and it just essentially popped itself off. At this point, the rod kind of going back, this guy right here, it hooks on there and kind of shows you what gear you're in, gear selector, which is already disconnected down there. I needed to pop that off the shaft, so I took it off right there, that little hook there, and so I can disconnect it and pull this the rest of the way off. I'm gonna unscrew these two guys and see if I can't pull this bit off. That should be the last piece that I need, I think. And then I can kind of feed that harness through and take that assembly off, put that guy back, and start reassembling it. So let's see if it goes that way. Alright, that worked. The hardest part actually of that was unplugging it. That thing was jammed in there pretty good. Once that was done, through that access hole kind of goes into the side over here. There is going to be one small hex screw or bolt that'll have to be undone, and then the whole thing can pretty much just pull right out. While this is out, I'm going to just kind of go over it with some black paint, as I've been trying to do with a lot of this as I pull it out. Once that dries up, I'll start putting it back together. I still got to see if there's a way I can get the cylinder out and either remove the pin, or I'm just going to cut it off. But we'll touch right back after I get this all painted up. Oh, just noticed, if you can see right there, that is that pin right there. Looks like it has like a little E-clip in there. If I can pop that E-clip off, I should be able to just pull that pin out and it shouldn't be an issue anymore. But we'll see and make sure that works. Alright, I got the parts primered. They're gonna have to sit here overnight. I'll be the first to say I did not prep these properly. I just kind of gave them a light scuff, knocked off any drips that were on there, and hit it with a primer. I don't want to spend too much time on this, just because where it's going to go, and I'll probably have to go back over it in the winter. So I'd rather worry about it then. I'll come back through tomorrow, hit them with like a flat black, and then start the reassembly. Put both of those pieces on, put the steering shaft on. That E-clip did pull off the lock for the steering wheel, so that was easy enough to take care of once everything was disassembled. During the assembly, I'll put the turn signal cam in, and then I'll probably have to wait on the steering wheel for a aftermarket quick release steering wheel hub, so I can put this steering wheel that I want to put on. We'll see if I love it or hate it. And then I can kind of continue from there and install the shifter base, and then start hooking up the cables for that, and that should be as simple as it is. But gotta wait on that for now. So we got our parts painted black, kind of a matte finish, and then cleared over that. They are pretty much ready to go back in. However, I did drop this and I broke this piece. I don't think that's an issue. I was planning on replacing the turn signal cam anyways. You can obviously see that it's broken right there. But the cam switch that I had gotten apparently is the wrong one. This one just kind of hooks it around just like that. I've seen it on, CJ Pony Parts and a couple other sites. Cheap, $10 or something like that. But I do not have that here right now, and I'm just realizing that, so I'm going to order that up, and I won't be able to install any of this until that point, just because I want to be able to fish these wires through, and I got to snip these and kind of solder the new wires in and whatnot. So I'm not going to install that just yet, but what I can do is I can install the shifter base in there and kind of get that going, and maybe even get the wires going for the reverse lights and the neutral safety switch. Go to these two switches right there. So let's get that mounted in and kind of get everything lined up there. Alright, so I got her mocked up. I just kind of lined it up as close as I can forward without being an inconvenience here to where the transmission is from the bottom on the tunnel. Then I lined up the center, and I got my holes drilled out in my mounting plates. Let's see. And just kind of did like a pilot hole. I'm going to just be using self-tappers for now until I'm comfortable where it is. I don't want to make any big permanent holes or even, weld the nut to the bottom until I know it's either not going to interfere with anything down there, or I'm comfortable where it's at. I'm just going to run these little self-tappers in there, 3/4, 1 inch, or whatever, and make sure she's comfortable. Then I'll have to go through and drill the hole that's going to actually feed the wire through, and I will show you what that looks like in just a second here. Alright, got her bolted down in place and got the wire ran through, or sorry, not the wire, but the shifter cord. So I got just a couple sheet metal screws holding it in place, 2 on each side, and I drilled this. It's maybe like a 5/8 hole for the rod to go through, for the cord. Definitely needs to be bigger. It actually called for, I want to say, like a 1.5 inch hole. I'd at least like to get a 1 inch. I'm just going to go with that for now, just for test fitting purposes. I know I'm just going to have to go back through and do it again, but I'm definitely not going to leave it like this, because it's going to end up gouging up the line and destroying it that way. The kit doesn't come with like any bushings or any of that, or even like, a grommet, which is strange. You're running through this sheet metal hole that you're just kind of cutting into. It would be nice to have something to kind of protect it. So I may do something about that myself, but again, we're just going to kind of do this for test fitting purposes. Now I'm going to hop into the bottom and bolt her up to the transmission. So let's see how that all lines up. It doesn't feel too bad, all things considered. Thought there was going to be more of a burr on there, but feels pretty good. So let's get it mounted for reals. And then I'm going to angle it this way. It's going to swoop under the transmission and come out to the side right where the shift lever is. Base is nice and stiff. I'm going to feed that wire back through again. Make sure I push it to the passenger side this time. Feels like she's binding up on something. I'm gonna get under there and make sure she's clear. Lost the glove down there. I always lose the good ones. We got a hex bolt that goes through there into the mount, and then this guy goes on to the little pin with a E-clip. We're going to put that on first. Apparently I should put the hex bolt in first. I might go ahead and do that actually. Alright, so there she goes. I got the hole going through. I feel like I could have made it a little bit bigger, but I'm just ripping a long hole in there. Then it comes up and goes into that E-clip. So let's go to the bottom and see if we can figure out a good way to route this thing. So there you can see she's coming down around the passenger side of the bow housing, and she's gonna swing up around and see if I can mount it right around there. Let me figure out how this is going to mount and let you know where it's at. So I removed the shift lever, or shift linkage, or the throttle linkage off of the lever up there. Just pulled the nut and the washer off. Now it tells me to cut that lever pretty much right at right in the corner up there. So I got my little Dremel wheel out and I'm going to cut it and hopefully not mess anything up. Alright, so this is what we did. We So we cut that bracket and then clamp that little Z-shaped one onto that shaft there. We ran the cable around the tail shaft here, up and around. Sorry, laying down under the car, not easy to see. Comes up the side, bolts onto the side of the servo here, and then it's going to line up right in there. So I got it coming out right there after I swapped out that bracket. I cut that first one, has that one coming out. Has the cable coming up and around by the tail shaft. I don't really care for how it goes to the transmission cross member down there. It just comes out tight right in there, and it's a weird angle. But so we got it through, we got it thread, gonna connect in and check to make sure there's anything else I gotta do before I get to that point. Alright, so we got her all connected. I did end up taking out, there's a bracket that holds kind of what looks like a fuel line in here, up just above the transmission cross member. It was kind of in the way of me. It's really bad visual, sorry. Me getting that line straight as I wanted it. As you can kind of see, it goes back behind the transmission mount there, and it was just bumping on it, kind of giving it a funky angle. So hopefully this is going to be a better angle for it. I got it through there, adjusted it as it described in the manual to the best of my ability. it has still a little bit of an angle, so it didn't slide in and out as it wanted to. But I did what I could given my circumstances. At this point, so I'm trying to get a better light in there. Maybe that's a little better. I'm going to go ahead and rehook up that throttle lever to it onto my old shift whatever here. And that should be just about it for the bottom end, I believe. Kind of ran through the gears and it felt fine. I still have to hook up the neutral safety switch and reverse lights. Those are going to be inside of the car, and then just kind of do the reassembly of everything. Still got to find a way to kind of tie this loop back a little bit. It gets really close to the drive shaft. It has some slack in it, so it does go further back here, which I don't really want it to make contact and kind of wear down. So I'll just kind of find a spot up front that I can kind of zip tie it to, and we'll show you what we're doing on the inside. Last thing, like I said, I got to get the throttle linkage on, and yeah, I think that's it out here. Alright, so we're going to wrap it up for now. I have to finish putting everything back into the engine bay, putting everything back together in the cabin as far as the wiring and whatnot of it. Still have to wire in the neutral safety switch and reverse lights, and then yeah, just pretty much put everything back together, and then we can kind of test it out, make sure she's working. I am splitting this up into 2 videos just because it's getting a little long. I think we're already at like a half an hour or something like that, but stay tuned for the second video where we wrap this thing up. And then I'm probably going to do the pinion seal before I take this thing for a drive. So hold on just a bit longer, we can get this thing back together. See you guys soon.